Hey, welcome. It is day 4,948 that Boswell Book Company has been in business, and I'm Chris of Boswell Book Company. I'm here today speaking with author Mark Bergen. He's a leading business and tech journalist who writes for Bloomberg and Business Week. He's got bylines in the New York Times, the Wall Street Journal. The one that makes me particularly jealous is the New Yorker, and many, many other places. He's appeared frequently on CNBC, MSNBC, NPR stations, lots of other places with initials. And he's my old college chum. And we're here to talk about his new book, Like, Comment, Subscribe, Inside YouTube's Chaotic Rise to World Domination. Mark, thanks so much for taking the time.
Yeah, thanks for having me
Yeah,
in
for
this
sure.
setting too.
Yes, absolutely. Well, tech is in California. You're in a sunny California setting.
That's right. Staying on brand.
Right on. So your book, in-depth, fascinating reporting all the way, kind of an all the way through, not kind of, it is an all the way through history of YouTube from conception pretty much up to the present. You've been reporting on tech and Google that owns YouTube for a long time, but what about this story were you like, I can tell that story? What was it about YouTube and the company that you were like, this fascinates me?
Yeah, I mean, there's a couple of things. The main one, I think, is just like the story of this really rapid whiplash for the people inside the company. This was. Um, I think it's hard for people to appreciate how young YouTube is. It was born in 2005, and really in the past decade when they've kind of they were like early on like part of the culture, but for a long time to the company, right? They were not only this underdog to Hollywood and TV and the movie industry, and this kind of a joke, right? That was like the riff for a long time, that they were like dogs on skateboards or like cat videos, and they also weren't taken seriously inside Google, their parent company, and I think, and there was a sense that it was like this playful sort of fun, like reinventing culture and creativity, and certainly a lot of naivete about their role in society. And then within a few short years, you see them kind of being equated with big tobacco and with all like a endless list of ills in our culture. And then you, on top of that, you have just the amazing cast of characters of the YouTube personalities and stars, and so that felt like this a great story that hadn't really been told. And to be honest, like that was the main reason why I did it, is that no one had tackled YouTube as a company story, no journalist had, at least before.
I think you did a fantastic job with it. It's extraordinarily well reported, in-depth research. You interviewed oodles of people for this. You talked a little bit about the early culture, and like everything early 2000 internet, I think it's hilarious. Of course, YouTube started as a dating site, right? Or that was an idea, and I think there seems like kind of a goofball culture and vibe to it. Tell me a little bit about those early days of YouTube. What was going on there?
Yeah, and we can all remember like the Charlie bit my finger, like, or pick your sort of favorite early viral video, right? They were kind of like irreverent, uh and like almost like slapdash lo-fi quality, and that was like part of the appeal. I think the company itself had that like culture ethos. So they were they were this independent company for 18 months before Google acquired them. And this is like a funny anecdote, but like they were all this stuff inside this tiny little office, that like rat infested office in south of San Francisco. They had like a company culture. The first day you had to like install your own IKEA desk, right? And they were all like, I think, using like 10 phone lines for 60 people. But I think there was also this. It, there were people there that they hired, at least I think, on the like making decisions around content moderation and like policy. And I think that's been obviously important, who were familiar with like live journal culture and were like part of that sort of community of like hackers and bloggers and like the early internet, Electronic Frontier Foundation, and like some of the lawyers that first worked with YouTube were also part of that generation. That was where like, and this was the case too, that like not only big media but also like governments were either trying to take down YouTube videos or black out the entire site. And so they did have this uh, culture of playing defense. I
Mhm.
think that is really important to understand. Um, and I like there was also I think it's also something that I found really interesting. Like some of them, people at the company, like certainly enjoyed YouTube culture and like followed it and tracked it really closely. I think others just didn't. Right, like it was an engineering challenge maybe for some. It was a well-paying job for other people. It was part of Google, which right like had that. It was a great place to work and still is right, and it pays really well. So I think I don't think it's the case that everyone that worked there like understood the culture, and I think it's really hard to do that, right? Like it is, YouTube is many different things. But
I,
I was
I
just
was
gonna
going to
say, like,
say, speaking of the culture, I think it's fascinating throughout the book how, and you're speaking to this a bit. I think how often the executives of YouTube kind of misunderstood what they had or didn't quite understand what the users were doing. Can you talk and maybe address a little bit, like over the early years in particular, but over time, especially how the YouTubers and video creators kind of shaped what YouTube is and its culture separate of what the company tried to do?
oh yeah, totally. I think that there were so many times in the company's history where that point was made, and I mean, this is like sort of the point of of the service, right? Like that
Mm.
uh, there's no YouTube often says there's like no gatekeepers. There's no Hollywood producer. There's no agent or director. There's no one dictating what type of videos that the creators make. I mean, I do think that the company dictates it with the way they set up their search and recommendation system and their algorithms. But um, yeah, I think there was a like some pioneering. You know, I talk about example and um, book the Vlog Brothers, Hank and John Green, who are still going strong, um, and like certainly like part of this like literary culture
Yeah.
that's always existed on YouTube, and they're early and they still have the Blog Brothers account, and then they went and did like these educational programs too. Um, they also formed VidCon, which was an actual meat space conference that where um, the creators. This was something that like was formed kind of without YouTube's involvement necessarily, right? And for a long time, like YouTube was pretty hands off with its creators. I think someone put it to me. I didn't put this in the book, but the like this, some people inside the company see the creators as cattle was the expression, which is fair. Like in the aggregate, there's so many millions of them, and so like and YouTube is, as a company, they try to build software that scales. They don't do well with like customer service or customer support. So that was long-winded answer. Sorry,
That's all right. That's all right. I think it's fascinating. I always
but
love to get.
I just
Go
like
ahead.
the other point is going to go. Sorry, it's like I think that there's a term, uh, it's like an academic term, but I think it's worth using. Like parasocial is like something that YouTube kind of invented, like the influencer or the creator that you where fans feel like they know the person even though they don't know them personally, and I think even feel like invested in their success, right? And we've seen the flip side of that, where like PewDiePie was a really popular YouTuber, where his fans felt that he was being mistreated, and so like they become very loyal, and like you see that with trolls, right? As a dark side, but like there is a positive side, which is like it's a different type of relationship than say you have with a TV star or someone in movies. And that's like we're seeing that now with TikTok and Instagram and Spotify too. Basically, like our entire online lives now are like filled with these sort of parasocial relationships.
Yeah, that interaction is really interesting. I mean, I think you can see it even moving into film space the way, so many big films now, particularly the superhero franchises, they feel as if they almost have to respond to the fans in a way that,
Yeah,
when we were kids, big movie franchises didn't care what you thought.
very true. And we have to think about YouTube as a advertising business, and it is
Mhm.
very effective for them to have personalities that can sell things.
Yeah. Oh, for sure. Speaking of content moderation, you brought up, I think you can't really talk about YouTube, or at least I can't, without addressing the Nazi question, right? Um, and well, there's the old internet adage, right? That if sooner or later, online conversation, online argument, like somebody's going to call someone a Nazi. But I feel like there was definitely a public perception of YouTube, like say 2014, 15, 16. And there was obviously a contentious election at the time that kind of fed into this. But there's a perception of YouTube around that time that you could not click through a bunch of, if you like this, you may also like recommendations without eventually hitting a Nazi, eventually hitting someone spouting a white supremacy theories. What happened there? How did that happen, and what did YouTube do to address it?
Yeah, so I think, I mean, one, I sort of, the excerpt that I did of the book in Business Week kind of was directly about this problem. I think, I mean, I guess, so like, and I'm not an expert on like far right ideology at all. Like my sense is like, YouTube had was pretty laissez-faire for a long time, and in part with this argument that like, who are we to determine, like they had rules against hate speech, but like it was a question about how to enforce that versus like, creators and people learn to like basically say everything, go right up to the line without like saying offensive. So I think like, certainly at one point it was easy for them to remove like actual like Nazi or neo-Nazi arguments. What I think when you got into the gray area became really problematic is something like the Great Replacement theory that right, the white nationalist argument online that right, but like immigrants or Muslims or Jews are like going to replace the white race. And this was something that like was seeded in many ways, and like in videos. I think it's something that was pretty direct, but like some of that would be in videos that were they were kind of maybe like presented as a self-help guru, right? Or like you had a lot of bloggers that would kind of use satire or like the language of satire in their like political messaging. I think a couple things were happening. One is, yeah, the recommendation engine was pretty powerful at there's like the rabbit hole argument, right? Like there is evidence that at least for certain people, they just kind of fed them echo chambers. There was, something I discovered in reporting the book is it like came out of that a lot of the like right-wing YouTube and the sort of alt-right came out of the atheist movement on YouTube. There was a strange evolution from like they call themselves the YouTube skeptics. And what they kind of mastered was like extreme, like not just extremism as political extreme, but like being kind of outlandish and extreme and like pushing the envelope does well. And that's not new to like, that's something that's we see on television too. But everything YouTube just takes all these trends and just like magnifies them quite a bit. And so yeah, that I think was a major reason where you saw a lot of these figures that either were like not on radio, television. I think just like they were pretty savvy about using YouTube. The company finally addressed this for a couple different ways. One was to change their recommendation system where they like treat like borderline content, no longer recommend it. And the second one came after in 2019, after like the tragedy in Christchurch, the shooting there, where they started to actually like write in new hate speech rules. And so a lot of those characters that from the past decade are like no longer on YouTube, or just like very difficult to find. If that makes sense.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think I've read a bit about it too in a couple other books that kind of synced well with yours in the last couple of years. One is a book about the flat Earth movement and how much of that in online communities kind of melded in and out of other fringe things. And I think you do, having read the book, I think you do cover all of this really well, and particularly YouTube's reaction. So
yeah, I wanted to just hit one more point if I can on that one. Like one thing that I thought was interesting and people inside the company pointed out was that YouTube took a really, like starting around 2017, like took a very strong crackdown on like what they call like violent extremism and terrorism, but it ended up being largely against like Muslim extremism, in part because that's what YouTube would say that's what governments agree on. They can all agree that like this is a terrorist, and so like rightfully that there's a valid point that
Mhm.
like Western governments in particular like were much more aggressive about Islamic terror. Um, and I think it's just that I think the company is responsible there. Like this was a total blind spot for them. They've been kind of scrambling the past few years to figure out a way to recover.
Right. Absolutely. And I mean, and it's not as if YouTube also was not used to display shocking acts coming out of Islamic terrorist movements.
So
For
yeah,
sure.
they had a big beheading problem like 8 years ago that was
Right. Oof.
terrible.
Yeah. It's, yes. But speaking to that, though, all the extreme political, the violent videos, these problematic videos, it's this all makes the news because it's shocking, of course. Just like on YouTube, this makes the news, and we talk about it because it's shocking. But um, news and commentary is such a small fraction of what's actually on YouTube and what people are actually watching. I think that's fascinating. Speaking of genres, something that blows my mind is that a huge genre on YouTube are the video game playthroughs, where someone will play a video game and just talk to you and like to me it's deeply boring. What are most people watching on YouTube? You know, what genres of videos, I'm curious, did you find in your research, and have you found over the years that have gotten wildly popular that kind of made you go like, what? Huh?
Oh, video game playing kind of makes sense to me. Like there's like a nice narrative built in. A lot of it's like the people watch not just for like the game, but the like sort of entertaining commentary. ASMR, mukbang. I don't fully understand. I'm not sure people inside YouTube do. Like kids content makes sense, but it is the largest kids entertainment platform. And if you go look at it, like if you look in the U.S., the most popular channels right now by traffic, it's almost exclusively kids channels.
Mhm.
Nursery rhymes and like toy unboxing is really popular now, less so. But now it's sort of like kind of cartoonish performances from young children. Um, and then outside the U.S., it's primarily in India. It's like Bollywood movies, and that makes sense to me. It's like an industry where kind of like the didn't have a lot of personal TV, so YouTube is the primary television screen, and like
Mm.
Bollywood is like leaned in hard on YouTube. Um, God, but I mean, there's like so many niche areas that like um, trying to think about like a really example that I like totally didn't was shocked to see. I mean, there's like I don't think I fully understand uh Mr. Beast is the most popular YouTuber. I don't know if you know Mr. Beast, right? At all.
No.
Well, you should check out his repertoire.
All right.
But he does like sort of reality TV, like kind of like game show gimmicks. But there's also like this sort of excess that and there are many people that are like copying his style. And some of it would be like they'll just rent out a house and like fill it all with like little play balls or something, right? Or it's like it's just or like they'll be playing around in a big pile of like colorful gunk or something. I mean, that's like it is like a bit like a reality TV tropes just taken to like the nth degree. Um,
Hmm.
and some of it's just like, what can we do that's like the most outlandish, loudest stuff.
Right.
But at the same time, like sometimes the really like quiet things, I think something that still I don't quite understand is how popular vlogging still remains pretty popular. And just it's almost like podcasts too, and like Joe Rogan can make like 3 hour long YouTube videos that millions of people watch.
Right.
And so I think there's something like even relatable of like and I think that like YouTube's talk about like the economics of YouTube reward that because it's like much cheaper to just post a video of yourself talking to the camera, and that stuff for the algorithms that kind of eat it right up.
For sure. I think you do a fascinating job in the book of covering both the rise of children's content, how it just has taken over so much, and also the strange controversies within children's content that have happened in YouTube over the years. Yeah, I think it's fascinating. Do you want to address that? Maybe it's kind of the
Um, yeah, I'll go briefly. Like I think
sure.
two things. I think some of the controversies, like the inappropriate or like debatably inappropriate or disturbing problems around kids videos is like the thing that really forced the company to take as much some of those dramatic action.
Mhm.
And I think that's in part because it was a wake up call for people, many of which are parents or just like didn't know about. And I think there's an understanding of like the logic inside YouTube for videos that say they don't understand or don't necessarily or find like disagreeable, but that they're like, who are we to tell? Like, we don't want to impose our values on the people. That logic falls apart when you're talking about kids, right? Because like there's like less discernment there. The second thing is the only area really where all of big tech, if you will, that U.S. government has actually regulated these companies, and that's around kids content, because YouTube was fined in 2019 for violating children's privacy laws, and so that's dramatically forced the company to like engage with kids stuff in a way that they haven't done any other kind of like type of media, because they're actually being regulated. And I should add that caveat here is like compared to television, YouTube is still like a wild west on children's content.
Right. So I know we don't have a whole lot of time. I want to ask just a couple more questions. I'm fascinated. You've been reporting tech for a long time. You've been reporting Google for years now, or on Google for years. What did you find in your research for this book? What jumped out at you? What really surprised you, or what just blew you away as you were researching this book?
Good question. I'll go with one thing that's surprised me was actually like the potential like different directions that YouTube could have gone.
Mhm.
And so I think like one, I didn't know, for instance, that there was one point when they had a team of people like curating the homepage, and that sounds like, I guess
Mm.
that's kind of maybe that a decade ago would have been like, oh yeah, of course, like, well, like who else are we like, how are also we gonna like get people to watch? Um, and then during the Arab Spring, they actually like hired editor like this digital newsroom to do curation of the footage out of that. And so I think that surprised me to the extent, just because I kind of always treated them as like this focusing on like this algorithmic being like a hands-off algorithmic content and curation. And so there were key moments where and they, to be clear, like they made decisions to kind of phase out or limit those approaches for a variety of reasons, chiefly like business reasons. But it didn't always have to be that way. And I think that was like really interesting to me.
Fascinating. Yeah, yeah. I do think it's fascinating. We think of it as such just a platform, but
Yeah.
then to find out what was behind it. So my last question for you, you know me. If I want to quit my day job, I want to start making videos. I want to go make a few $1,000,000 and
Yeah.
retire. What videos should I be making, Mark?
Yeah.
What should I be doing?
ASMR probably. Uh, I don't know. It's really hard. I think there's like the one thing I never got, eh, eh, despite trying, is like a like financial distribution across YouTube. Like I'm really curious to
Mm,
see what that looks like. My sense is it's pretty top heavy. Like the 1% makes a lot of money. That being said, like you can't and like the company's like very they like not willing to disclose these stats, and yeah, I think there are certainly a lot of like middle class YouTubers that make a fair amount of money. Yeah, so I think yeah, so you want to make millions, probably video games. Um, but then you're also competing with a lot of people that are already making video games. Um, I don't know, pop songs, uh, uh, nursery rhymes maybe, make something for kids. Although like it's the making money off of kids content is much better now, so being regulated. So I don't know. Don't quit your day job. Yoga videos seem like but again, like there's a lot of people doing that. It's a very crowded space.
I've tried yoga. It
Yeah.
didn't end well.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right. All right. Well, I suppose my millions will come another route, but
Yeah. Sorry to break it to you.
I appreciate the insight. That's what I've got. Any other closing thoughts other than everyone watching this should scramble over here and buy a copy of Mark's book like yesterday?
Nope, that's it. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, thanks so much for taking the
Thanks,
time.
man.
I really appreciate it. Take care.
Yeah, thanks, dude. Good to see you. Be
Cheers.
well.
Likewise.
Talk soon.